what's change? A couple ways to describe change. Change is a difference occurring over time. Another way to view change is a positive difference occurring over time. In either case, when you personally, Bill, consider making a significant change in your life, what types of emotions, both positive and negative, are stirred up inside of you? Okay? So is it excitement about the change? It's excitement about the results of the change. Most of us as human beings, especially when we get a little more mature in years, are not so excited about change. But we are excited about the results that change bring, and so we have to focus on the results and less on the change. We have to go through the change as a necessary ingredient to achieve the results that we want. And we will never make a change unless the results we want are significant enough to get us to say, I will do something that's uncomfortable for a while so I can get what I want. Now, question number 2 is, when you consider your customers and you ask them to make a significant change from your competitor to you, from somebody they're comfortable to someone new, from something they understand to something that maybe is just a little bit different, what types of emotions, both positive and negative, do you think it stirs inside of them when they're put in a position to make a decision to change? Tanya?
Insecurity.
Insecurity? John?
Just a nervousness about whether it's the right thing to do.
A nervousness. And so you got to remember every time you make a change, how you feel, both positive and negative, and what causes you to change. And put yourself in the shoes of your customer the same way to say, okay, while it may seem obvious to me, in their case, there's things they don't know or don't understand, and I need to put myself in a position to help them through that transition. Yes, Deborah?
I was simply going to add that I think the customers also would question the benefits of that change.
Which is the result, right? And so that's why I asked you that question. It's about the result. So how do you then help them? So part of what you got to think about is, how do you communicate that value, that benefit, that result in a way that helps the customer overcome that initial resistance to want to change from whatever they're comfortable with? Sometimes that can happen very rapidly, the more comfortable and the more they trust you. Other times it can take a longer period of time. But in either case, if you understand what it's going to take, then you can help the customer go through that process. So, whenever you introduce change to your customer, to you personally, and what we have just done is introduce change to you as an organization, not we, meaning me, but we collectively are introducing a change in culture, a change in a little bit approach, a little more outbound. So there's a lot of things that are going to be coming at you as individuals. Now, in the perfect world, it would be nice if we introduced change, you accepted it, we produced great success, and it's done. That would be really nice. Wouldn't it? Now, let me tell you what's really going to happen. What's really going to happen is you've all walked into this room, just like your customers when they're on the phone with you. And at first, there's some optimism, some denial, some skepticism. There's all kinds of range of emotions going on in here, right? Some of you are really excited. Some of you are really not excited. Some of you could care less. We're all over the board, right? Whatever it is, it is. Now, what happens whenever a major change is introduced into someone's life, whatever kind of the first feeling is, some things begin to happen. There's a natural, there's some risks, some concerns, and the rate at which people dip and the risks and concerns is different based on where they're coming from. But it's a natural thing for people when change is introduced in their lives to begin to plunge where maybe there's some misgiving, maybe some doubt. Is this really going to work? There's a little bit of fear. And that curve can be different for different people. And what happens is, depending on how it's handled, that can continue to dip. And the dip can be really sharp or it can be really kind of fairly flat. And each individual goes through this curve separately and individually from every other individual in the room. So Bill could be on a curve like this, right? And Bob could be like this. And they're going through it at the same time. So you as a manager, Jeff, have to understand that your people are going to be going through this curve at different times in different ways. But they are going to go through the curve. That's the first thing you got to accept. And our job is to help them go through the curve. just like your customers are going to go through this curve, and it's your job as a salesperson to help them through that curve. Okay? So this point, confusion, withdrawal, bailout, this is when people are at their worst. They're in the trough. Now what we got to do is say, okay, we're past the worst part. Let's start. Now we're good. Let's move through it. This is natural. People begin the initial climb. They see things are working. They've got more hope. They're exploring new ideas, new concepts. They're moving on. They're determined this is going to work. And then it kicks in, the final climb, and everything's working. You know, not everybody, but you know, through different phases, and people get to this at different times. People are now excited. They're seeing great results. They're focused. They're enthusiastic. And now people take ownership of the process. It's a stage. It's a phase. It happens to all of us. Going through a transition curve is natural. Getting through the transition curve is also natural. This is just part of who we are as human beings. We've got to go through something like this. Now, what we want to do as individuals is we want to recognize this, see it when it's happening, and take personal responsibility to say, you know what? I know what I'm going through. I'm going to get through it. Now, I can either take 2 months to get through it and really agonize in this whole thing, or I can get through it in a week or two. Our objective as individuals, as managers, as executives, is to help each one of us get through this curve as fast as possible so we can see the benefits or the value or the results of what we're going through. Could you imagine the impact on your team, Eric, if it took you longer to get through the curve than your team? Devastating, wouldn't it? You'd need some of your team to help you through it. So as the management team is going through this process earlier so they can take a leadership role and help their people get through the transition curve quicker. Now, I'm going to introduce to you the decision-making model that customers go through when we try to make them change from whatever they're doing to whatever we want them to do. And the decision model, coincidentally enough, looks just like the change model. Why do you think that is, Martise? In 10 seconds or less.